Hello, New Hampshire. No, I'm not Joe Biden. I actually know where the heck I am. This is Kansas, right? No. I'm Mark McCloskeys. This is my wife, Patty McCloskey. All right. And we have been now going around the country for the last couple of months telling this story. Okay. And the campaign's kind of winding down. We're going to do one more event here in Amarillo tomorrow, and then I think we get to go back home. Okay. But I always start with some questions. How many of us own guns? Okay. Right? How many of us think we've got a right to defend ourselves with those guns? How many of us think we've got a right to defend ourselves against a mob that shows up at our door? How many of us think we've got a right to defend ourselves against the mob with our guns? How many of us think that if Robert Francis O'Rourke becomes a gun czar of the United States, we'll have that right next year? And that's what this is all about, okay? I start with a Declaration of Independence, right? We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that amongst these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Now you remember when Joe Biden tried to say that a few days ago, right? You know, we hold these rights, with the men, well, you know, maybe he was thinking about sniffing somebody's hair and he couldn't remember all the words, okay? But he said, you know the thing. The problem is that Joe Biden doesn't know the thing. The Democrat Party does not know the thing. The thing is that these rights are given to us by God. These are certain unalienable rights endowed by our Creator. The right to defend ourselves, the right to have property, the right to have self-control and to pull oneself up by one's own bootstraps and to make something of themselves through hard work and determination. These are rights we're born with as human beings made in the image of God, okay? When our founders put down the words to that Declaration of Independence and put down the words of the Constitution, they weren't creating rights. They were merely acknowledging and writing the rights that God had all given us as human beings. The problem is the Democrats don't believe that. Most of them don't believe in God. None of them believe that the power rests in the people. They think the power rests in the government. What the Democrats believe is that the government should have all the power and then delegate back to the people those few privileges that they think we're smart enough to handle, okay? One of the most telling things that's happened in the recent past with Joe Biden is he was asked a question out in Las Vegas a couple of weeks ago about whether or not he was going to pack the Supreme Court. And he says to the reporter that says, now, don't you think the voters deserve to know what your opinion is going to be on that issue? Joe Biden says, no, they don't deserve. Stop there, right? Because even senile old Sleepy Joe knows that he couldn't complete that word and survive. He couldn't actually finish saying, no, you poor dumb animals out there don't deserve to know what I'm going to do because I'm the elite, right? And I will tell you what to do. Vote for me, and we will then tell you what we're supposed to do, all right? Vote for me, trust me, because I know better than you. You're all a bunch of dumb sheep out there, and you don't have any independent thought. And so you don't deserve to know what we're going to do for you because you don't have the mind to handle it, okay? And that's the position these people have. They do not believe that the power rests in the people. The founders of this country, the people that created this unique experiment in government, for the first time in the history of the world, recognize that the people have the power, and we created a government subject to our control, which if it got too far out of line, we could pull it back in. And ladies and gentlemen, that's what the Second Amendment's all about, all right? Having the power to pull the government back down to size if it gets out of hand. The reason we're on the campaign trail, amongst other things, is that we have seen up close and personal what happens when the Democrats have absolute control and when you live in a one-party state, okay? St. Louis has always been a Democrat-controlled city throughout my whole life. I grew up in the suburb of St. Louis. I moved down to Texas in 1978, I think. I went to undergraduate school in Dallas at SMU, went to law school in Dallas, met Patty in Dallas, and she was going to SMU Law School. Then we moved back up to St. Louis. We had a nice house out in the country with 5 acres and a barn and our horses and all that kind of stuff. And then one day I made a mistake. I drove Patty down into the city of St. Louis where all the industrial elites lived back 120 years ago and built, big houses in private places. And I said to Patty, anytime we want to, we can flip our country place in one of these big houses downtown. And she says, okay, how about now, right? So that was 32 and a half years ago. And I gotta lay a little foundation for you because St. Louis is kind of an unusual city. I think it's the only place in the country where this exists. Back when St. Louis was the edge of the wilderness and was growing very rapidly as an industrial city, the city itself was very dirty and very polluted, and because there's mostly steel and clay industry. And so the people that could do so would go out in the countryside, buy some farmland, put a wall around it, put in streets and sidewalks and build houses, and they became what were known as private places. Everything inside the perimeter of those private places, the streets, the sidewalks, the public utilities, everything are owned by the residents, not by the government. It's all private property, just as much private property as your own living room. Of course, now the city grew past it, so these private places are now all enclosed within the city of St. Louis. Well, ladies and gentlemen, the city of St. Louis is a remarkably dangerous place. Those of you who live here in the civilized world probably can't imagine the level of danger and level of crime in St. Louis. Why? Because our prosecutors in the city of St. Louis and our government in the city of St. Louis has always viewed their job not as taking care of the citizens, not as creating safety and security, but for social change, for manipulation of the power structure. St. Louis is the most deadly city in America. About a month ago, Rudy Giuliani and Bernie Kerik, the former police commissioner in New York, came to visit us and do an interview with us. And so Bernie Kerik and I started comparing notes on New York and St. Louis. And as you know, New York is having a very bad year. But out of 8,400,000 residents in the city of New York, at that time there had been 280 murders. Like I say, they're having a bad year. In the city of St. Louis, out of a population of 300,000 people, we had 212 murders. Okay? Murder rate in St. Louis is 20 times the murder rate of New York in a bad year. And that's just a background level of violence. Right? Then the George Floyd thing happened. And they've got all these people out there that pretend to be the voice of social justice and harmony and all living together as one nice communal nation. They decided the way to get social justice and bring us all together on the night of June the 1st and 2nd of this year is to burn down downtown St. Louis. Okay? They decided the real way to create social justice was to break windows, loot stores, set fires, and shoot people. That night, 4 police officers were shot in the city of St. Louis. A 5th, retired police captain David Doran, who was working secondary at a pawn shop about a half a mile from my house, was murdered. I mean, the criminals in the city of St. Louis have so little fear of any prosecution for any crime that these random mobsters, this wasn't an organized crime. They didn't come in with the intention of breaking into that pawn shop. This wasn't a gang. The 7 people that broke into that pawn shop and killed Captain Doran didn't know each other. They just happened to be part of the mob. They pried up the steel security doors, came in, shot Captain Doran, and then live streamed his death. Okay. That's what life is like in the city of St. Louis. And this background is important because where we live in our private place, Portland Place, there's what's called Kings Highway Boulevard. It's a 6-lane major north-south thoroughfare with sidewalk, grassy strip, and walls on both sides, about 100 feet from side to side, probably about as far as me to the back end of the church here. And then beyond that, there's kind of a tony little district called the Central West End. They used to have, until recently, bars and restaurants and shops and boutiques. We started to notice after that June one night that more and more of these buildings were getting boarded up. And I got ahead of myself a little bit. One of the most telling things that happened that night of June the 1st was that there is a 7-Eleven in downtown St. Louis, 2 blocks from police headquarters. And Patty and I were sitting up in our bedroom, and we watched from a live helicopter feed from the time the first brick went through one of the windows of that 7-Eleven, and then the looters came in and looted it empty, and then somebody threw in fire, and then the whole building became engulfed in flames, and the ceiling started to come in. 10, 20, 30, 40 minutes of watching this. Do you know how many police showed up? 0. You know how many firemen showed up? 0. Patty and I look at each other and say, you know, when the fit hits the shan, you're all out there and you're wild lonesome, and you can't count on anybody but yourself, okay? So we start seeing more and more of the area around us getting boarded up and the windows broken up. There's a little pharmacy around the corner from our office, and our office is 3 blocks further into the city than my house. And we can go there to get something, and all the windows are boarded up. I know the owner, so I said, what happened? He said, well, the alarm went off the other night. And I said, did you go down to see what was going on? He said, no, I didn't want to get killed. I said, well, what happened? He said, well, they broke out the windows, they pried up the roll-down security bars, they came into the shop, they stole everything they could steal, and they broke everything they couldn't steal. Well, how long were they in there? 6 hours, okay? Did the police ever come? 10 hours after the alarm went off. Once again, you're out there on your wild lonesome. I got nothing negative to say about the St. Louis Police Department. They're friends of ours, they do the best job they can. They're understaffed, they're overworked, they're underfunded, and they just don't have the capacity to handle this level of violence, and the government will not support them. This isn't usually something I say in this talk, but I'll mention it to you because it is completely outrageous. Our George Soros-funded circuit attorney, that's what we call our prosecuting attorney, not only has released from jail everybody arrested during those riots, the 250 plus people that the police arrested for the looting and the vandalism and the shootings and the arson and everything else that happened after the George Floyd death. She has a secret list of police officers that she believes are too racist to take evidence from. And so if you're a police officer in the city of St. Louis and you go out to arrest somebody, you don't know whether or not that case will ever get prosecuted. Now, she doesn't prosecute many cases anyway, and she tries darn few less. But if you're a policeman out there, how are you going to do your job if you don't know whether or not you're on that blacklist where this extremist prosecutor won't take the case and prosecute it no matter what, just because of who you as a policeman are? Okay, that's the city of St. Louis. So, another example of how bold the criminals in the city of St. Louis are is that the group that organizes riots in St. Louis is an entity called Expect Us. Expect Us is headed by a young lady named Cori Bush. Remember that name. Expect Us is so bold that they publish when and where they're going to have mob actions, okay? They have a Facebook page. They say they'll publish something that says, you know, expect us, and then it'll say 6:30 p.m., the street corner, you know, we're going to be loud, we're going to be in their face. They think this is a game. This entity disavows peaceful protest. They expressly state that they need to break the law to get their message across. On television, one of the two organizers of this mob, other than Cori Bush, was a guy named Rashid Aldridge. He was on television saying, yes, we break the law, we have to break the law, we need to bring the violence to the areas where people think they're safe and secure, to shake them up. We want to be as disruptive as humanly possible. All right, this is the organization. They posted a flyer saying they're going to have a mob action in our neighborhood on the Friday before June 28th. And so, since they like to burn things, and we didn't particularly like the concept of burning up, we went out and got fire extinguishers and staged them around the first floor of our house. And since they like to shoot people, and we would kind of like to be able to defend ourselves, we put weapons around the first floor of the house as well. And we get ready for the onslaught that Friday afternoon, and nothing happens. It doesn't occur. And so we, you know, dodge that one. We've got a little farm about 50 miles outside of our house, outside of St. Louis. And so we went out to the farm over the weekend, and we worked on the farm. And we came back in Sunday afternoon, and our daughter was coming into town to have dinner with us. And so we're going out on the patio to start doing our barbecue. And my patio is an open patio. You all have probably seen it on television. It's about 70 feet from the gate that separates my neighborhood from Kings Highway. wrought iron gate, been there since 1888. But when I start going out in the patio and we start getting prepared, I start hearing the mob form down the street. And I just asked my daughter to go to the grocery store across the street and a block down to get some stuff for dinner. And so when I heard the mob, I walked out, opened the gate, walked down the street, looked down Kings Highway and saw now hundreds of people staged down there right where that grocery store is. So I got my daughter on the cell phone and said, did you get out of there in time or are you stuck in the mob? And she said, no, I got out. I'm south of it. I'll be there in just a little bit. So fake news number one, when you can read it, if anybody's reporting on this speech tonight, I guarantee you that tomorrow morning there'll be something in the newspaper that says that the peaceful protesters came through an open gate. Well, I had just pulled that gate and closed behind me, all right, and it locks. It's got an automatic lock on it. These gates are a set of bat wing doors. The one side, if you pop it real hard, even though it's locked, you can get the deadbolt to come past the tab. The other half of that gate is staked into the ground with a steel bolt that's got a hasp and a padlock on it. It cannot open, and it does not open. So just keep that in mind for fake news number one. But so our daughter comes back, we're sitting down getting ready to have dinner, and all of a sudden the crowd starts to get noisier and noisier and noisier. And we're talking screaming and shouting and chanting into megaphones and beating drums. And then we hear what we don't hear. Kings Highway Boulevard is constantly full of streaming traffic. We don't hear any cars. And once again we realize the police have closed down Kings Highway to vehicle traffic to let the mob use it, okay? And then we look out at the gate and now all of a sudden we see a few people at the head of the mob coming past our gate. And then all of a sudden Kings Highway fills from wall to wall as far down as we can see with a screaming, angry mob. They're beating on drums, they're shouting profanity, they're shouting their slogans, they're chanting into their megaphones, you know, all the typical stuff, you know, whose streets, our streets, no racist police, all this stuff, and then things that I can't repeat in the house of God. And we look at the gate, and there's no police there. The police had closed down the road to let the mob use it and didn't stage any police at the entrance to our neighborhood. We've got one private security guard in our neighborhood. He's skedaddled out of there and there's nowhere to be found, okay? So as the mob comes past the gate, Patty and I look at each other and say, God, we sure hope they don't come our direction. Right then the gate bursts open. And I mean, somebody popped the one half of it open, the other half of it got folded flat, and they just start streaming in, just like somebody asked me how many people came through that gate. I said, to me it seemed like everybody in the Western Hemisphere. But when they start streaming through the gate, I walked out on the corner of the porch and I said the two most hateful, racist, white supremacist words known to the English language. I said private property, okay? When I said private property, it inflamed them because these people are Marxists and private property is antithetical to their beliefs. When I said private property, they started storming in and storming towards us. Well, Patty and our daughter went in the house to call 911. I went inside the house and I got my AR-15, all right? And I come back out on the edge of the porch and I'm standing there holding my rifle, and everybody tells me this isn't a particularly safe way to hold your rifle, but you know, I'm old and dumb. You would think that the average person of normal intelligence, when seeing a grumpy old guy out there with a semi-automatic rifle and wrinkled clothes and no shoes on, saying impolite things like, get the hell out of my neighborhood, they might actually like back up or do what I'm asking, which is get out or leave. But no, they keep coming in more and more and more. And don't know what to do. You know, I didn't want to have to kill anybody, but I wasn't going to get killed myself, and I wasn't going to have the house burned down. But I'm thinking that Patty's still in the house calling 911. Well, then all of a sudden I see her show up in front of me on the grass between me and the mob. And I mean, we're talking, I'm up on a porch, I got a hedge, I got a stone wall, and she's out there in the grass in front of me, waving that dumbass little Bryco pistol over her head, right? A gun that she knows doesn't work because we had disabled it to use it in court in the case we tried, okay? And, now, I kind of like her, and you know, she's a lawyer, and I'm just a smart lady, and she finished first in her class at Penn State, and then, you know, as a lawyer, all that kind of stuff. But then I see her standing out there with that dumbass little Bryco right in the mob. There's hundreds of them. We're talking, I think the FBI estimated 300 to 500 people screaming death threats, screaming rape, making every kind of unrepeatable comment about her female anatomy and where they're going to put that pistol when they take it away from her. And that's not going to be my bedroom, and that's going to be where I have my dinner, and that's where I'm going to have my breakfast, pointing up the windows of our house after we kill you and take the house, okay? But now I've got a problem because I'm still up there on the porch and Patty's in front of me, and I don't have a clean line of fire. Because if something happens, I might hit her. I kind of like her a little bit and would not want to accidentally put a bullet in her. So now I've got to get out there on ground level too. So I come out through the front doors of the house and meet her on the front porch. Now, this mob has got two guys that were there just to be intimidating. They were in body armor. The one guy's got camo-colored body armor on, and he's right up on the front porch, and he keeps moving closer, and he's now close enough, he knows I can see what he's doing. He reaches into his pockets, pulls out 2 loaded magazines, points them at me so I can see that they're loaded, clicks them together, points at me and says, "You're next." Guy standing next to him is wearing light-colored body armor. He turns around, back of it says human shield. He's wearing a sidearm. And he keeps inching closer and closer and closer. And you've probably seen this on TV or on the web, but there's a picture of me holding the rifle leaning over like this talking to Patty. And what I'm saying to her is, if this guy comes any closer, I'm going to have to kill him, okay? And I slid the selector switch on my rifle in fire position. Patty leans over to me and she says, "You're not killing anybody tonight," okay? The voice of reason, all right? And we didn't. And nobody got shot. Not a shot was fired. The house didn't burn. We didn't get killed. They threatened to kill our dog. Our dog's still alive. And if she gets a mail-in ballot, she'll probably vote Republican, right? But we held off the mob. Even a non-functional gun has some intimidation value. Mine was fully functional, I can assure you of that. But the crowd didn't do any damage except to that 132-year-old gate, to our psyches, you know. I don't think we'll ever be the same. But that's the story y'all have seen on television, and that's about the most I get into when I'm on Fox or on Newsmax. I get about 4 minutes, okay? But that's the easiest part of this story. The worst was, and the far worst was yet to come, because we had a client of ours, young African-American woman that we'd known for a long time, and we'd represented her and her mom and her sisters, and this was a young lady that we felt was a part of our family. We'd gone to her graduations, and she got an undergraduate degree, and I think Patty bought her a little Tiffany necklace when she graduated from college. Then she got her master's degree, and we went to that celebration. Her husband had been a city of St. Louis police officer, and he'd committed suicide, and we went to his funeral. On a lot of these occasions, we'd be the only Caucasians at their house or at the celebrations, and we consider these people to be family. They thought the same about us, and they still do, I think, you know. But this one young lady was part of this Antifa group. She'd gotten brainwashed. On Tuesday, following that Sunday, we got a call at the office, and this was this young lady, and she got Patty on the phone. She said, "What you guys have done is inexcusable, and we're going to come back on Friday, and we're going to kill you, and we're going to burn the house, and there's nothing you can do about it." And this wasn't just a one-time idle threat. She kept Patty on the phone for an hour and a half, just working her up one side and down the other, on just, you know. And finally, after an hour and a half of this, she says, "Well, Patty, maybe if this Friday, if you and I and some of my girlfriends come out in front of your house and pass out water bottles, maybe." Nah, we're still going to kill you, and we're still going to burn down the house, and there's nothing you can do about it. Well, we were upset, to say the least, by this. We started hiding everything we could hide, and taking glassware off the shelves and sticking them under beds and stuff. But we didn't know what to do. Earlier in that week, though, I'd gotten a call from a gentleman at the White House. And he called to say that the president wanted to express his support for us, and if there's ever anything they could do for us, just give him a call. So I called that gentleman back and I said, "That's a pretty gosh darn good time right now, if you guys want to do something to help us out." And so he gave me Mark Meadows' phone number, okay? So I called up Mark Meadows and I told him the story I just told you, and Mark Meadows got on the case. And the next phone call I made was to Tucker Carlson. Okay? And I'm sitting on the bench in the kitchen, Patty's sitting next to me, and I got Tucker on the phone, and I'm telling him the story that I just told you, and Patty's crying on the bench next to me. And Tucker goes on the air with it and said, you know, got talking to Mark McCloskeys, and I can hear Patty sobbing in the background, and told the whole world the story I just told you, and that the police had been ordered to stand down, the St. Louis police weren't going to help, and the state police didn't have any jurisdiction, they weren't going to come in and help, and we were all out there in our wild lonesomes, and we were going to be killed, okay? But we still, you know, didn't know whether or not anything was going to come and save us, and now it's Thursday afternoon, and we've not been to sleep at all. I mean, since that Sunday night, we've been up the entire time, literally sweating 24 hours a day because we're like really terrified. And our daughter had not yet left town. She had stayed there. And so Thursday evening, our daughter comes up to each of us, gives us a hug, and says goodbye, expecting that she would never see us again. And that night was the longest night of our lives. And then Friday comes and we still don't know what to expect. But ladies and gentlemen, I got to tell you that between the White House and Tucker Carlson and some help from Colonel Allen West down here in Texas, when that Friday came and the mob started to form, and now the FBI estimates it at between 500 and 1,000, and they start marching down Kings Highway Boulevard, chanting and screaming and chanting, burn that MF'er down. Well, now we've got the FBI light aircraft circling our house. We had 6 Navy SEALs protecting us. We had maybe 10 secondary employment cops from rural jurisdictions. And I digress because I missed an important part of this. I've been doing this too many times, and quite frankly, last night we had a debate watching party, and afterward, the guy that's running to fill Mike Conaway's spot on August Flugler, and I sat up and talked politics till about 2 o'clock in the morning, so I had a great deal of sleep, okay? But after we got this warning, we tried to get some secondary security for our house. In our business, we're both personal injury lawyers. From time to time, we hire secondary employment local cops to do security. The guys we normally hire didn't want to do it, okay? They said they couldn't afford the bad press. They referred us to an entity that does corporate security worldwide, a bunch of special forces type guys, and they got some bad press during the Ferguson riot, and they didn't want the bad press. They suggested that we hire secondary employment cops. And I said, that's where we started, now we come full circle. What the heck are we supposed to do? And the guy says, well, if I were you, I would just take anything you can't live without, put it in your car, drive away, and just abandon your house. Okay? And I said, no effing way in heck. We're going to go down to the ship if we have to, but we're not going to abandon our house. Okay? So that Friday comes, and the mob comes up to the gate. And, you know, I got to hand it to him because the chief of the St. Louis Police Department, John Hayden, despite the fact that they'd been ordered to stand down, the chief himself and his lieutenant in charge of the riot patrol comes up to the house, meets with my private security, and the chief himself stayed there most of the night, okay? We had what they used to call in the Reagan administration, peace through superior firepower, okay? And we held the mob at bay once again. And they didn't break through the gate. We now heavily reinforced the gate. Nothing got burned, no one got killed, no shots were fired, nothing even got spray painted, okay? But one of the keys to the reason why we're standing here in front of you now is that out in that mob, during that night, and that night went on for hours and hours and hours, and, you know, tell you one funny story. Sometime at about 2 o'clock in the morning, one of the Navy SEALs that was my personal guard was scoping the high-rises around our building, and all of a sudden he sees somebody scoping back, and they drop on us like rocks, right? And then his radio goes off. Turns out that's an FBI sniper doing cover for us. Part that's not so much fun is that standing out in front of the gate to my house was a young lady on a megaphone chanting, "You can't stop the revolution." You can't stop the revolution. You can't stop the revolution. Well, Jim the SEAL standing behind me with his M16 rifle says, oh yes I can. That young lady was Cori Bush, okay? She's a avowed Marxist. She advocates the violent overthrow of our government. She was on Twitter today talking about how she's going to shake up DC and defund the Pentagon and defund the police, and that she's going to be in your face, and that America just isn't ready for a BLM activist. She's now my United States Congressman from the 1st District of Missouri. All right. A woman who vows the violent overthrow of our government, who's an open communist, whose organization vowed to kill us and burn down our house, is now my representative in Congress. Think about that. I now live in a jurisdiction where my congresswoman wants me dead, all right? Out of the 300 to 500 people that broke down my gate, stormed into my neighborhood, threatened us with death and rape and arson and every unimaginable thing that I can't repeat in the house of the Lord, not a single one of those people is being prosecuted for anything, all right? Out of the 250 people that the police arrested for the riots in downtown St. Louis, the looting and the arson and the vandalism and the shootings, our circuit attorney, this George Soros paid for circuit attorney, Kim Gardner, hasn't prosecuted any of them, all right? On the other hand, guess what? She and I get charged with 2 felonies, all right? They can cost us 4 years in prison, cost us our law licenses, cost us our livelihood, all right? One of the essential elements of the charge, one of the charges against us was brandishing a deadly weapon, even though we've got a castle doctrine state, even though we were on our property, even though we never fired a shot. The felony of brandishing a weapon in Missouri requires that the weapon be readily capable of lethal use. Well, Patty's gun wasn't. So now they got a problem. They got to arrest us to do what their political duty is, which is persecute us for exercising our Second Amendment rights. But her gun didn't work. What do? When the truth doesn't work, lie. When a lie doesn't work, fake the evidence. They went the third route, which is fake the evidence. The Assistant Circuit Attorney, Chris Hinckley's emails and voicemails were leaked to the public. He ordered Patty's gun taken to the crime lab, disassembled, repaired, reassembled, test fired. By God, it works now. Charged her with a crime that didn't exist at the time that she allegedly did it, okay? Just think about that, right? And then think about the fact that where we live in St. Louis now, our United States representative wants us dead. Our circuit attorney is faking evidence to try to put us in prison for 4 years, right? This is what happens with single-party rule. This is what happens when the Democrats take over and have no fear because no one is going to rein them in. No one is going to control their behavior. And ladies and gentlemen, think about this. If these corrupt politicians, if this George Soros corrupt prosecutor, and if this communist revolutionary now to be congresswoman will go to that length to fake evidence just to put this young lady in prison for doing no more than exercising her Second Amendment rights, think about what lengths she'll go to fake the results of this election. If you were to tell me that a year ago that we would have universal mail-in balloting in states with no requirement that you have to prove who you were, or that this was your signature, and mail it in and have it counted like a real vote, I'd say you're nuts. If I said that if you said anything against such a procedure, you would be accused of voter suppression, I'd say you're nuts. But we now have to accept as a norm an opportunity for fraud and deceit on a scale which we've never seen before. We've done 2 Trump team tours through Pennsylvania. Patty's from Western Pennsylvania, and her family is like the ideal American dream. Her grandmother came over from Slovakia with a sausage under her arm and a name tag that said, "My name is Anna." They went to work in the steel mills in Johnstown, Pennsylvania, her grandfather and her father, and they had nothing. They lived in little two-room slapboard shack in Johnstown. Two families living together in this little tiny house. They had, a total of 8 kids. Out of that little two-room cabin, these people that came over without speaking English, without having any possessions, one of them became the president of the largest advertising agency in the world. One of them, Michael Novak, founded the American Enterprise Institute and was one of the world's premier Catholic theologians. One of them was a president of a shoe company in St. Louis before he died young. 2 of them became trustees at Penn State University. Patty's dad took a different track. He became an artist and spent his life teaching art to inner city school kids, okay? And that's what this country is all about. However, the forces of evil, and they really are evil, these people that want to take over our lives in our country, they don't believe in personal property, they don't believe in democracy, and they will actually tell you that this thing, this American dream of pulling oneself up by their own bootstraps, by being self-reliant and achieving things through hard work and diligence, that's racist. That has to be eliminated, right? Because they believe that the only power, now if you accept a world where people have the right to work hard and scrap and save and accomplish things and build their own lives, that puts power in the hands of the people. The left does not want power to be in the people. The left wants the power to be exclusively in the government. They want to wipe everybody down to a level of 0 and then give us back whatever limited privileges they think we deserve. That's the exact opposite of what this country is founded on. And if you think that this is just kind of a philosophical difference between Republicans and Democrats, and this election is no different than other elections, ladies and gentlemen, that's nonsense. This is an election for the life of our form of government and a life for our country. These people wanted to kill me for doing nothing more than defending myself. Think about what happens if Kamala Harris gets elected president. I'm sorry, Joe Biden and Kamala Harris get elected president on November the 3rd. What's the most shocking thing that Joe Biden said most recently? He was being interviewed out in Las Vegas a couple of weeks ago, and the interviewer asked him whether or not he plans to pack the court. He won't say it. And the interviewer says, well, don't you think the people deserve to know what you're going to do? And of course, and if I already did this, did I already do this? All right, I think it's important. He doesn't want to let you know he's going to pack the court. Well, you know what packing the court means? Packing the court means adding more judges in the Supreme Court until such time as they have enough Democrat lackeys in there that they can do whatever they want. The president can veto the laws of Congress. Congress can override the veto of the president, but there's no appeal from the Supreme Court. If they pack the Supreme Court, they will immediately redefine the Second Amendment to prohibit individual ownership of weapons. They will also make Puerto Rico and Washington, D.C. states, giving them 4 more senators. They want to do away with the Electoral College. Once they do away with the Electoral College, all of us in what they call flyover land will have no voice whatsoever. We will be voiceless sheep controlled by the elites on the East and the West Coast. And if you think that when Kamala Harris issues her executive order 100 days after she becomes president and orders you to give up your weapons, how many of us are going to voluntarily give up our weapons, right? What happens when we don't, okay? Do you think these people will be shy about doing things like coming and taking them from you by force, even though it means bringing a mob to your doorstep and trying to kill you like they did to us? Okay? This is serious stuff. If we lose this election, if Kamala Harris and the extreme left, if Sandy Cortez and Robert Francis O'Rourke and Bernie Sanders become the effective government of this country, there will be no clawing it back. They will have so much control of everything that we will never get it back. Our voices, our ability to vote for government that represents us will be forever eliminated. Right? We have got right now a president that in 3.5 years, despite being villainized and persecuted by the mainstream media every single day, a new crisis, a new lie, a new complaint against him every single day, has done more in 3.5 years than any other president's done in their entire lifetime. More than Joe Biden's done in 47 years, I can tell you that. He's given us the greatest economy the country's ever had. He's made us safer and more secure. He has rebuilt the military. He backs the police. He backs the military. He will never allow any veteran to die waiting in line for health care. So a president that is not embarrassed to say Merry Christmas instead of Happy Holidays, okay? This is a president who really understands that thing that I started with, and that's the Declaration of Independence, that we hold these things to be these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal, that they are endowed by their Creator with certain unalienable rights, that amongst these are the right to life, the right to liberty, which means being free of government oppression, and the pursuit of happiness, which means that thing about being able to work hard, build your life for yourself, be independent, and be free of government to make something of yourself as you will with the talents that God gave you, okay? Donald Trump believes in that, okay? And that's why it's important to elect him president. This is a guy who understands that we kneel when we pray, and we stand for the American flag. And ladies and gentlemen, if we don't re-elect him and re-elect all the Republicans up and down the ticket, I mean, we got slandered early on by the press saying that we used to be Democrats. We were never Democrats. I've been a lifelong Republican. My parents were lifelong Republicans. And I've heard every 2 years, since the time that I can remember, all the politicians standing up and saying this is the most important election of your lifetime. But I have seen the future. I know what it looks like in a Democrat-controlled state. I know what it looks like when these Marxists have the power to come and threaten you. And we survived only because we had the power of the White House and Colonel West and some Navy SEALs and all that behind us. But ladies and gentlemen, that shouldn't have to be the case. We shouldn't have to live in fear. We shouldn't have to. How many of you people can call up Mark Meadows and have him save your life, all right? You can't depend on that. The Second Amendment, while it exists, gives us the right to defend ourselves. But if we re-elect Donald Trump, we'll have a government that will stand up for us and help defend us from the top to the bottom. And ladies and gentlemen, we have to do it. Thank you all very much.